to the Unseen Podcast, a podcast dedicated to missing people, unresolved cases, and UK true crime. This week we're going to be looking at the disappearance of Jaime Cheesman in Grimsby in 1993. Jaime was just 16 at the time that she disappeared, which caused heartache and distress for her family and friends. Her whereabouts are still unknown to this day, and I think her story is so important to cover. This episode contains descriptions that some listeners may find distressing, so listener discretion is advised. Wellingborough is a market town located in Northamptonshire in the East Midlands. It's around 11 miles from the town of Northampton and is well connected to the rest of the UK through the train station that's located in the town. The town's population has grown steadily due to these connections and good transport links. Wellingborough is also where Eric and Barbara Cheeseman lived and brought up their daughter Jaime throughout the 1980s and 90s. Jaime is an only child, and by all accounts the family enjoyed living in Wellingborough. She grew up well, attending school and making friends. It's reported in the Northamptonshire Telegraph that Jaime's father described her as being an outgoing girl who had lots of friends and was very sociable. Jaime entered her teenage years in the early 90s, and by 1993 she was 16 years old and ready to leave high school. It's reported that by that summer Jaime had decided what she was going to do after she left school, and she had settled on going into childcare. Her plan was to get some work experience working in a nursery and then go on to do further studies if this was something that she enjoyed. Jaime had a plan for the rest of her life, and she knew what she wanted to do and where she was going. She had always had a good relationship with her parents, and she was relatively close to them. During 1993, Jaime had decided that she wanted to go and stay with one of her best friends and her family. Her friend, however, lived in Grimsby, a northern coastal town and seaport in North East Lincolnshire. It's located around 120 miles away from Wellingborough, and around a 2.5-hour journey by car. Jaime had decided that she wanted to spend some time living away from home, and believed that staying with her friend was the best option. Jaime did not live there permanently and would travel back down to Northamptonshire to see her parents regularly. This meant that she would spend much of her time travelling between her home in Wellingborough and her friend's house in Grimsby. Jaime's friend lived in the Comer Place area of Grimsby. This area was dominated by flats and tower blocks that made up most of the estate, and this is where Jaime, her friend and her family lived in 1993. At the end of October that year, Jaime travelled down to see her parents as she regularly did, and spent some time with them in Wellingborough. It's reported that Jaime told them that she was going to be back on the Saturday of that week, and her parents said bye to her as they had done a number of times since she moved up to Grimsby. For Jaime and her parents, this was now a usual occurrence, and she kept in touch with them regularly and let them know where she was going to be. She then headed back up to Grimsby. Jaime's parents were expecting her back that Saturday and carried on with their week as usual until Friday the 5th of November, the day before she was due to return. That evening the Cheesemans received an alarming phone call. The call came from Jaime's friend, who her father Eric would later describe as sounding frantic. He later explained that she told them that Jaime was missing. She said that she had been in the flat and she had had an argument with someone in the house, and that she had just left and not come back. Eric later told Grimsby Live about the phone call. He said, "She said they'd been at the flat when Jaime had had an argument with someone and she'd gone off. I woke my wife and we rang the police straight away. We just didn't understand." The news that nobody appeared to know where Jaime had gone made Eric and Barbara worry immediately. They had continued to be in touch with Jaime since her move to Grimsby, and it was not usual for her to not let anyone know where she would be, particularly as she was meant to be travelling back down to Wellingborough the next day. Jaime's parents contacted police in Grimsby immediately and reported Jaime as a missing person. Humberside police quickly took on the case and began to make inquiries about Jaime's whereabouts. She was only 16, and the police were conscious of the fact that they had to find her as quickly as possible. One of the most important things was to establish a timeline for Jaime and figure out where she had been seen and by who. This would hopefully narrow down the window for investigators and point them in the right direction. The police were able to establish that after leaving Wellingborough, Jaime had travelled back up to Grimsby with her friend's father and another man. It was discovered that the group were travelling back up to Grimsby and had plans to go and sign on for an employment benefit once they got there. Police were able to confirm that Jaime had got back to Grimsby and that she had signed on Wednesday the 3rd of November. This, however, was the last confirmed sighting of Jaime from a third party. The information available showed that Jaime had reportedly returned to the flat where she had an argument with someone in the home overnight, and that she had then abruptly left. A BBC article from 2011 reported that Jaime had left all her possessions behind when she left the flat. This is a crucial piece of information, as if she had left to perhaps pursue a new life, why would she have left all of her things behind and taken nothing with her? It's evident that Jaime was nowhere to be found in the flat. An extensive police search began of the area close to Comer Place and the surrounding areas of Grimsby to try and locate Jaime. If she had walked away from the flat because of some disagreement, it was hoped that she had not gone far and would be located quickly. It was soon apparent, however, that this was not going to be the case. Officers tasked with tracking down Jaime could not find her, and there appeared to be no trace of her in the surrounding town. This news was of course both worrying and devastating for Jaime's parents, who had been hoping she would be found quickly. This worry was further compounded when it was reported that a body had been found in Grimsby, not far from where Jaime had disappeared. This was of course a line of inquiry that police had to follow up on, considering the proximity to Comer Place where she was staying. Using DNA, the police began the task of comparing it to the body that had been found. When this DNA came back, however, it was not a match. The body that had been found was not Jaime's. Her father Eric would later talk about this ordeal and the worry that this discovery caused him and his wife. He told Grimsby Live, "Of course we worried that she was dead. The worst moment was when that body was found close to where she'd disappeared. It was a huge relief when the DNA tests proved that it wasn't Jaime. But we weren't any closer to knowing the truth." It was of course a source of comfort that Jaime's body had not been found, but where was she? This was the question that both her parents and the police were now facing. It was as though she had just vanished into thin air, and this was an awful thing to comprehend. The police investigation continued over the next several weeks, with officers being dispatched to speak to locals and those that knew Jaime. These lines of inquiry, however, did not lead to any definitive answers. No one appeared to know where she could be, and there was nowhere specific that Jaime would have gone to. She only knew the flat in Grimsby and her home in Wellingborough, and both of these places were checked for any sign of her. Jaime was just 16, and it was apparent that she did not have the means to just disappear and not be found, particularly as she had not taken anything with her. Over the course of the investigation, one theory began to emerge about Jaime's disappearance. It's reported that she had made friends with a local traveller community that had not long since arrived in the area. The theory was that perhaps Jaime had left with this traveller community and adopted a more nomadic life. This was of course just a theory, and it did not appear that there were many facts to back this up, aside from speculation and the fact that Jaime appeared to have made friends with some people from the community. Nonetheless, it remained a line of inquiry for the police. Over the next few weeks and months, however, Jaime's missing person case began to have some problems. There was no trace of her, and the officers did not appear to be any closer to finding out where she went. They continued to appeal to the public for any information about her whereabouts in the next few years. Her photograph was put up on posters in the hope that she would be spotted out and about somewhere. Over the next decade, witnesses reportedly saw Jaime a number of times in different places around the UK. These tips were passed on to police, and they investigated each sighting thoroughly. The first sighting came in 1994, not long after her disappearance. It's reported that during that year she was spotted in both Northampton, the area in which she lived with her parents, and in Milton Keynes, a city around 30 miles away from her family home. These sightings were investigated, however Jaime was not found as a result of these tips. In 2000, around 7 years after her disappearance, another tip came in that Jaime had been spotted at a nightclub in Northampton. Again, however, this did not lead to her discovery. In 2004, a sighting was made in Wellingborough itself, and this sighting came from Eric, Jaime's father. Eric later told the media about this sighting, stating that he believed that he saw her at a market stall close to their home. He told Grimsby Live that he had spotted someone that he believed to be Jaime, but that she had disappeared into the crowd before he could get to her. He explained that due to his arthritis, he wasn't able to keep up with her as she mingled in with the crowd. He stated, "I'm convinced that it was her. My gut feeling has always been that she's still alive. My head was all over the place and I tried to keep her in my sights, but I couldn't move fast enough. Before I knew it, she was gone. I called the police right away and we spent hours poring over the CCTV images, but I couldn't spot the girl I'd seen. She's already been gone 11 years, but she looked so like her." This must have been absolutely horrific for Jaime's father, and the fact that he was then unable to find the girl he'd seen in the images must have caused him distress. The last known sighting of Jaime actually took place in 2015 in the town of Alnwick in Northumberland, around 260 miles from Wellingborough and 194 from Grimsby. It's reported that this sighting was of a similar-looking lady to Jaime. Police also investigated this lead. However, once again, disappointingly, no trace of Jaime was found. Over the years, Humberside Police confirmed that they have investigated 9 sightings of Jaime since her disappearance, and each one was looked into. None, however, led to Jaime's discovery, or to anyone that knew her. In 2011, there was a renewed appeal in Jaime's case, with police once again describing the events leading up to her disappearance 18 years previously. Northamptonshire police, who were also involved in the investigation, made a statement. It's reported in a BBC article that Detective Chief Inspector Martin Kinchin spoke to the public, stating, "Obviously at 34, Jaime is not going to be taken home like a child, but her family would desperately like to know that she is safe and happy, if nothing else." He added, "It's my hope that after 18 years, people may now feel able to help me piece together Jaime's story. Jaime is not in any kind of trouble, and her family who still live in Wellingborough are desperate to hear from her. I welcome any information whatsoever." It was evident from this police appeal that investigators believe that Jaime may indeed have started a new life, and were open-minded about where she might be. The article also states that the police were still looking seriously into the fact that Jaime may have adopted a traveller lifestyle, and may well have a family of her own by that point. The appeal did give national coverage once again to Jaime's case, but sadly no one came forward with any information that aided the investigation. In 2016, however, there was some movement in her case. It was reported at the beginning of March that year that Humberside Police were undertaking an extensive forensic examination of the flat at Comer Place, where she was last known to have been seen. It was also reported that police were conducting a search of the area surrounding this, in a bid to piece together Jaime's final known movements. This forensic scene was crucial as the flats were due to be demolished at the end of 2016. This did go ahead, with Comer Place being demolished over a 15-week period. The forensic search therefore was important to recover any final evidence that may still exist, and may help with the investigation. Following on from this forensic search of the flat, Humberside Police also made another appeal for information relating to Jaime's disappearance. This included releasing a new aged photo of Jaime as she might look as a 39-year-old woman. This was published once again in the hope that someone had seen her and may even know her as an adult. It's reported in a BBC article in 2016 that Humberside Police were very pleased with the response that they received from the public in relation to the appeal. They stated that it had been a fantastic response and that it meant that they were now pursuing new leads in the case. A spokesperson stated, "We have received information from the public that we are acting on, but we cannot say more than that at this stage." This fresh appeal was of course welcomed by Jamie's family, with her father stating that he was still hopeful, despite the time that had gone by since she disappeared. The following year, in 2017, the Missing People Choir appeared on the TV show Britain's Got Talent. The choir had been set up by Peter Boxall, whose 15-year-old son Lee went missing in Sutton in 1988. It was set up in conjunction with the Missing People charity in the UK, which tries to reunite children and adults with their loved ones and helps families to get information about their loved ones out to the public. The choir's aim was to raise awareness of missing people around the UK, and during their performance on Britain's Got Talent, the pictures and names of missing people were shown on the stage to engage the public with their cases. Many families of the missing got involved with the choir, and lots of missing people were shown on the show, including Jaime Cheesman. This was a fantastic cause and meant that Jamie's case, amongst other important missing people, was shown to a huge audience. The choir was successful in reuniting some family members. It's reported that following on from the performances on the show, 2 missing people were reunited with their loved ones after they saw them performing in the choir. Police were also able to confirm that they received information relating to another 2 missing person cases. This was such a positive result from the campaign and shows how important publishing the pictures of the missing is. Jamie's case, however, is still unsolved and she is yet to be found. Her father Eric has been instrumental in keeping her story in the news and keeping her memory alive. Unfortunately, Jamie's mother Barbara died in 2012, not knowing what happened to her daughter. Eric has spoken to the press about his search for Jamie, and he stated in Grimsby Live, "Barbara spent the last 5 years of her life in a nursing home, but I visited every day. She'd ask a lot about Jamie and if there was any new information about her. It was hard for me to keep telling her there were no real developments. Now she's gone, Jamie is the only family I have. I can go weeks without speaking to anyone. I'm scared I'll die before I find out where Jamie is. I'd love to know if I'm a granddad. I think about it often. I have 3 Winnie the Pooh teddies which I'd like to give to my grandkids." Eric added that he often goes to the local shopping centre in High Street, hoping that he will see her and to hand out posters of Jamie. He stated, "Sometimes shops will put the posters up for a while, but they always take them down after a few months. I don't want people to stop looking for her. I have to keep reminding them. Every day I wonder if I will bump into her. I've got a strange feeling that our paths will cross. I'm not sure what I'd say. I just want to know why she left without a word. We hadn't had an argument and I'd no idea anything was wrong. If she is out there, I'd like her to know that I'm not angry. I'd like to be back in her life, but most of all, I just want to know she's okay." Eric's words and story are so touching, and I can see how much distress Jamie's disappearance has put him and his family under. Jamie's case is not straightforward, mainly because there is not much information available to examine. It's clear that police are maintaining an open mind about where she might be, suggesting that she may have started a new life elsewhere, maybe due to her connections with the traveller community. This is of course a possibility, and it's clear that police perhaps have evidence pointing in this direction. There have been several sightings since she disappeared, implying that she may be out doing exactly that. There are, however, several things that do not seem to match this theory. Jamie left the flat without any of her possessions, and at age 16 it would have been difficult for her to just disappear and start a new life. The fact that she'd left after an argument and didn't contact anyone, including her parents, is also a little strange, considering the regular contacts she would usually have with them. She also didn't return to the family home, which may have been a logical step for Jaime after leaving Grimsby. Police have also conducted a recent forensic search of the flat at Comer Place, suggesting that perhaps there was evidence to find there that may aid the investigation. It's clear that there are many unknowns in this case, and unfortunately this can lead to speculation. There is no direct evidence that any harm came to Jaime that day in November, and therefore police and her family continue to be hopeful that she will be found. I think Eric has done an amazing job of keeping her story in the public eye, and he's worked hard to make sure Jaime is not forgotten. That is so important in missing person cases, and I would like to think that by telling Jaime's story, we are also remembering her. I really do hope we find out what happened to Jaime, and that Eric can finally understand what happened to his only child that November, 27 years ago. If you know anything about the disappearance of Jaime Cheesman, you can contact Humberside Police on 101 or the Missing People charity at 116 000. You can also visit missingpeople.org.uk to look at information about Jaime and print out her missing person poster. I will add the link to the show notes. Thank you for listening, and thanks again to our sponsor June's Journey for supporting this episode. If you want to play the game, remember the link is in the show notes, or you can download it free from the App Store or Google Play. Thank you to all of our patrons for your amazing support of the podcast. If you'd like to have a look at what we offer on there, including bonus episodes, ad-free early access and stickers and shout-outs, take a look at the link in the show notes. Thank you to everyone who has been reviewing the podcast recently. Giving a review wherever you listen is always really helpful. Please do connect with me on social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube, or you can send me case suggestions or just general comments and questions to my email at theunseenpod@gmail.com. I hope you can join me again next week as we delve into another case, and as always, I'm Caprice and this has been Unseen.